So hello everyone. I'm Gurveen Kaur, Assistant Professor in Department of Management Studies. So today we are going to discuss the topic bailment and pledge and law of agencies. So what's bailment basically? Bailment is another type of the contract in which all the basic requirements of the contract are already being applied. So bailment will be dealing with the delivery of the goods when it is being delivered from one person to the another person for some purpose. For example, there is a marriage. For marriage, we are taking the tents. For marriage, we are managing the tables and all those kind of things. So these are the goods which are being delivered from the shopkeeper, from the owner to some house where the marriage is over there. So these are the goods which are delivered from one place to the another place. So let's take the definition part. A bailment is the delivery of the goods by one person to the another for some purpose. Upon a contract that they shall, when the purpose is accomplished, be returned and otherwise disposed of according to the direction of the person delivering them. The person delivering the goods is called the bailer. The person to whom they are being delivered, that is the bailee. So the bailment is basically the concept of delivering the goods from one person to the another person. Now, as per the direction of the person who has delivered the goods will be either returned back or they will be disposed of. So the goods which are being used and consumed, they will be disposed of, and other which are being just used upon, like the furniture or the tent or something other kind of the things, they will be returned back. So the person who is delivering the goods, that is called as a bailer. And to person whom they are delivering the goods, the person to whom the goods are being delivered, that is known as the bailee. So who is delivering, that is the bailer, and to whom it is being delivered, that is the bailee. So this is under the section 148. Bailment means the act of delivering the goods for a specific purpose on trust. The goods are to be returned after the purpose is over. So this is for some specific purpose. Like I said, it's for marriage. Fine. So it may be for a marriage, it may be for a party, it may be for some get together kind of things. So it may be any purpose. So the bailment, the goods may be delivered to some person for some purpose over it. In bailment, the possession of the goods is transferred, but the property, that is the ownership, is not transferred. So in the bailment process, the possession of the goods is being transferred. So suppose I am the owner of a good. Now I have given a good to another person for some purpose. So I have transferred that from my possession to him. So that good is with another person for 2 days. So for 2 days, the possession has been transferred to that person, but it doesn't mean that he will become the owner of that property or owner of that good. Owner will be the same person who was earlier, but it is just the possession that has been transferred. Means from my possession, it has gone to the another person's possession. Bailment can be only of the goods. As per the section 2(7) of the Sales of Goods Act, goods means every kind of the movable property other than money or actionable claim. So anything which is movable, bottle, fine, the doors, the wood, the coal, it may be anything, the benches, the chairs, the tables. So anything which is movable, anything movable property rather than money. We are not going to consider money over here, and neither the actionable claim. We are not going to consider any claims over here. Thus, keeping money in the bank account is not the bailment. So when we are keeping the money in the bank account, that is not will be the bailment, because that is saving your money over there. You are putting your money in the bank account. So that is a different concept. That is the concept of banking. But the bailment is a different concept, and bailment will be only and only dealing with the transfer of the goods from one person to the another. Essentials and the legal rules as to the bailment. First is the contract. A bailment is usually created by the agreement between the bailer and the bailee. So it will be between the two parties, the bailer who is going to deliver the goods and the bailee to whom the goods are being delivered. So it will be a kind of a contract or an agreement between them. Delivery of the goods. In bailment, the possession of the goods must be delivered by the bailer to the bailee. So the goods will be moved from the one person's possession to the another person's possession. No transfer of the ownership. It will be only and only transfer of the possession, not the transfer of the ownership. The ownership will be with the person who was already the owner of that goods. So no transfer of ownership in bailment. Possession is transferred from one person to the another, but ownership of the goods remain with the bailer. So the possession is going to get transferred, means it is going from one hand to the another hand, but the ownership will remain the same. The owner will always remain the same. Delivery of the goods for some purpose. The delivery of the goods must be for some specific performance. So it is going to happen for some specific performance. Return of the specific goods. The goods are delivered to the bailee with the condition that the same goods will be returned to the bailer after the accomplishment of the purpose. So once the goods has been delivered, the bailee has to return back those goods with in the same condition as they were being delivered earlier. So condition should be same. The goods must not be damaged. The goods must be in the proper condition and proper way. Movable goods. In bailment, the goods bailed must be movable. So the goods which are being bailed, they must be movable goods. Deposit of the money into the bank. So deposit of the money into the bank by the customer is not a contract of bailment, because the money deposited is not returned in the identical coins and notes deposited. So it will not be the bailment. So money put in the bank, it will not be the bailment of the goods. Next, it would be the classification of the bailment on the basis of the benefit. The bailment exclusive for the bailer's benefit. So we are going to give the goods for the benefit of some money or some benefit or the rent which is going to come out of it. So on the basis of the benefit, we will say that the bailment is exclusive for the bailer's benefit. So it is going to come for the bailer's benefit. Now, bailment exclusive for the bailee's benefit. Now, bailee, he is going to get the benefit of the goods which are being transferred, and the bailer, he is going to get the money out of it, the rent out of it, or something in consideration out of it. So, bailment for the mutual benefit, both the parties will be in the win-win position. On the basis of the willingness, voluntary bailment, express contract between the parties. So this is a voluntary bailment. One has asked for the goods and another has given a consent, yes, the goods will be transferred over there. So because both the parties were into the willingness, so that was the express contract. So both are going to express their willingness to give the goods and to another return something in consideration, either money or something else in consideration. So voluntarily bailment arises as per the operations of law. So involuntary would be when some person is not going to voluntarily express it, or it would be involuntary. It would be either into the stress kind of thing. On the basis of the rewards, gratuitous bailment, where neither the bailer nor the bailee get the remuneration, then it is gratuitous. So it will be when both the person, they are not going to get benefit out of it. Non-gratuitous bailment, where either the bailer or the bailee get the remuneration, then it is known as the non-gratuitous bailment. Next are the rights of the bailer. So right of termination. The bailer has the right to terminate the contract of the bailment if the bailee does any inconsistent act with regards to the goods. So to whom the goods are being delivered, if that person is going to make some inconsistent act with the goods or some inappropriate action with the goods, or the goods are being damaged, so at that time the bailer can terminate that contract. The bailer can close down that contract. Right to demand the return of the goods. Anytime in case of the gratuitous bailment, the bailer can demand back the goods bailed at any time even if he had led to for some specific goods. So a bailer who has given the goods can take those goods in return, can take their goods back at any specific time if there is some problem. Either the remuneration is not being paid, or the rent is not being paid, or some damage was there with the goods, so he can demand the return of the goods at the same time. Right to file a suit against the wrongdoers. So whenever something wrong is done with the goods, or the goods are not kept properly, or they are not being maintained properly, or something else happened with the goods, so they can be taken back. And a case can be filed against the bailee to whom these goods were being delivered. Next is the enforcement of right. The duties of the bailee are the right of the bailer, and bailer can enforce those rights by filing a suit against bailee. So that is the enforcement of the rights. So bailer's right and the bailee's right, they are to be enforced so that the goods are kept properly and the remuneration is paid on time. So the enforcement of the rights is very important at this part. Duties of the bailer. The duty to disclose the known defects. The bailer is bound to disclose all the defects related to the goods which he is known. So if the bailer is going to give the goods to the bailee for some rent purpose or for some specific purpose, then he must disclose all the defects in the goods. If something wrong is with the goods are broken or the goods are damaged or something else is there, so it's the main duty of the bailer to inform all those and to disclose all those defects which are related to the goods to the bailee. Duty to bear the extraordinary expenses, where the bailment is the gratuitous and the bailee is not to receive any remuneration, the bailer should pay the bailee all the necessary expenses. So here the bailer is going to pay all the necessary expenses if it is a gratuitous one, gratuitous in which no remuneration is being received. Bear the risk for the loss. The bailer is to bear the risk of loss or destruction of the things bailed if the bailee had taken the adequate care of the goods. Now, if a person has taken care of the goods, but then also something wrong happened with the goods, then it is the duty of the bailer to bear the risk out of it. Duty of the indemnifier bailee. Bailee has to indemnify the bailee. The bailer has to indemnify the bailee for any loss due to the imperfect title in the goods bailed. So, if the goods were not being bailed properly, or some title was defective out of it, or some things which were not informed on the proper time, the condition was not informed in the proper way, so then it will be the duty of the indemnified bailee. So bailer has to indemnify the bailee for the same loss. Duty to receive back the goods. On the expiry of the terms of the bailment, the goods are to be received back by the bailer. Then the rights of the bailee. The rights to interplead. If the person other than the bailer claim the goods, the bailee may apply to the court to stop the delivery. So if the bailer will ask for the return back of the goods, then it's okay. But if any other person comes and claim the goods, then the bailee can move to the court for the same. A right against the third party. If a third person wrongfully deprive bailee to use the goods or cause any injury, the bailee is entitled to such remedies which are available to the real owner. So if some third party comes and do some wrongful practices over there, so the bailee can entitle for such remedies. The bailee can move to the court and can ask for the remedies for the same, that how come a third party will enter and ask for all those information. Right to a particular lion. When the bailee has rendered some services or the skills on the goods, he had the right of the particular line unless he is paid. So whenever the bailee has rendered some services or the skills of the goods, so when the bailee is going to use that goods for some specific services or the skills, then he can ask for the particular right of lion, which will be unless he is paid for the same. So he will be paid for the same. Then right of the journal lion, banker, factory, attorney of the high court, police brokers will will entitled to return a security for the journal balance for the account any goods bailed to them. So anything which is bailed to them, that would come into the journal lion. So it won't be paid to them, it will be into the form of the journal lion. Right to claim the compensation in case of the faulty goods. If the goods are being fault, if the goods are having some fault, if the goods are having some defect, so the compensation will be paid for the same thing. Right to claim the necessary expenses. So whenever there are necessary expenses which are being acted over there in some installment of the goods, in some installation, in some keeping the goods in the proper way, in the proper condition, in the proper weather condition, all those things. So next, the necessary expenses are to be bared by the bailee. So bailee is going to take the expenses from the bailer. Right to return the goods to any of the joint bailer. So if there are two joint bailers, the two people have given the goods to one bailee, so bailee can return those goods to any of the one person. So because they are the joint bailers over there. Next are the duties of the bailee. Duty to reasonable care. He or she has to take care of the goods which are being delivered to him or her. Duty not to make the unauthorized use of the goods. It doesn't mean that if the goods are being delivered to him and he will give the goods further to next person. No, no unauthorized use of the goods are to be taken. Duty not to mix the bailer's goods with his own. So it is not the duty of the person, it's the duty of the person to keep the goods which are given by the bailer on the separate place and the another which he is possessing that at the separate place. Duty to return any profit out. So if there is any profit out of those goods, then it is to be returned back to the bailer. So this is the duty of the bailee, to give all those things back. So there would be further the two concepts, that is the particular lion and the journal lion. So first is the particular one. It is available to the bailee against such goods in respect of which he has rendered some services involving the exercise of the labor or the skills. Now the bailer has given the goods to the bailee, and bailee is going to use some labor or some skills to install those goods over there, or to use those goods, or to take the service of those goods. So when he is going to install some labor or some skills extra out of it, extra out of the goods, then that would be known as the particular lion. So that will be particular one. General one would be, it entitles a person to retain the position of the goods belonging to the another for the journal balance of account. Bankers, factories, warefingers, attorney of the High Court, and the police brokers may, in the absence of the contract of the contrary, retain a security of a journal balance of the account any goods bailed to them, but no other person have the right to retain as the security of which the balance goods bailed to them, unless is an express contract to the efforts. So that would be into the journal part. When these, now bankers, they keep something. If the account is open, so security is to be kept. If the factory is giving something, the security is to be kept. So when we are going to keep the security out of it, so that would be in case of the general lion. So it will be in the specific cases only. Banker, factory, attorney of the high courts, the police. So they are going to keep something into the security of this. So there are the two different concepts. One is the particular one and then another is the general one. Now, if the goods are lost, so who will be the finder of the goods and how that finder will act? A person who comes by an article is not obliged to pick it up, but if he does so or take charge of it, becomes a bailee. So if a person found some lost goods, then he will become a bailee of that goods. First, he is not to pick, but if he does so, then he is to keep that goods into the possession and he will become a bailee. Such person is called the finder of the goods. So because those was lost and he has found it out, so he will become a finder of the goods. The finder of the goods is in the position of the bailee and enjoy all the rights and the duties of the bailee. So he will come at the position of the bailee over there. Right of finder of the goods, the right of lion. So it will be particular or general. Right to sue of rewards. So in case of any rewards, he is going to get the few of the rewards out of it. Then right of sale, right to sale, when the goods are perishable in nature, where the lawful charges exceed 2/3 of the value of the goods. So that would come into the value of the goods which is going to come out of it. So that would come into the right of sale. Further, duty of the finder of the goods to take the due care of the goods, to find the true owner, must not use the goods for his personal purpose. He should not mix the goods with his own goods and must return the goods to the real owner if he is founded. So, what are the duties of the finder of the goods? First, he has to take care of the goods. Then he must find out the true owner to whom these goods are to be returned. Then he is not going to use that goods for his personal purpose. He is not going to mix those goods which is with his own personal goods or his own goods, and he has to return those goods to the real owner in the proper form only, in the proper condition. So these are the duties of the finder of the goods. So that was with the part of the bailment. Now next we are going to do the pledge. When we are going to keep something under pledge, we are going to give something for the security for the payment of the debit. So we are going to keep something like property. So these are being pledged so that the money can be taken out of it. So bailment of the goods as a security for the payment of the debit or performance of the promise is called the pledge. The bailer is called the pledger or pavion, and the bailee is called the pavion. So the bailer, he is known as the paviour, and the bailee is known as the pavney. So that is in the concept of the bailer and the bailee. When something is kept in the pledge, when something is kept for the pledge or for some security, and that is for some debit kind of thing, for the payment of the debit kind of thing. So essentials of the pledge. First is the delivery of the goods. The delivery of the goods to be pledged is necessary to constitute a pledge. So something is to be kept as a security, as a pledge, then only the money will come out of that. Delivery of the goods should be by the way of security. The security being for the payment of the debit or the performance of promisor. So that would come into the delivery of the goods which are being given at the way of the security. Goods must be movable. An implied condition to return the goods. So goods are to be returned back. So these would be movable goods only. Right and duty of the paviony, right to retain, right to particular lion, right to extraordinary expenses, and right in case of the default of the pavior. So if the pavior has given the goods which are default one, then the paviony can use his rights. He can go move to the court. Then the rights and the duty of the pavior, right of redemption and right to take back the goods. So he can take back the goods, he can return out of the goods, he can ask for the payment of the damage and ask for the return of the goods also. Next, the pledge by the non-owner. So a person who is not the owner of the goods, then he is going to pledge something. So the pledge by the non-owners. So pledge by the mercantile agent, when some agent is there, he is not the owner of the goods, but he is an agent of the goods. When a mercantile agent is with the consent of the owner in possession of the goods or the document of the title of the goods, any pledge made by him when acting in the ordinary course of the business of a mercantile agent shall be valid as if they are expressly authorized by the owner of the goods to make the same, provided that the paviony act in the good faith and has not the time of the pledge, not at the time of the pledge. Notice that the pavior has not authorized the pledge. So pledge by the mercantile agent. Now the owner of the goods, he has hired some agent, he has authorized that person to be an agent, and he can further take the actions for that particular goods. So that mercantile agent will keep an agreement, will keep a notice between the paviony and the pavior. He will act as an agent and he will do the same for the goods, and the payment will be done for the same. Pledge by a person in possession under the voidable contract. When the pavaneur, the bailiff, has obtained the possession of the other goods pledged by him under a contract voidable under the section 19 of section 19A, but the contract has not been resigned at the time of the pledge, the pavanee acquire a good title to the goods, provided he act in the good faith and without the notice of the pavanee defect to it. So the pledge of the person by the possession under the voidable contract. So when the contract has become voidable, the contract has been finished. So when the goods are under that possession, it will be returned back to the person. So when it is given in some good faith, but it is not noticed that there is some defect in the title, so it will be returned back to the person and it will become as a voidable contract. Next, the pledge where the pavaneur has only a limited interest, where the person pledged the goods in which he has only a limited interest. Only when there is a limited interest, the pledge is valid to the extent of that interest. So it will be valid only in the interest of that contract. Next, the pledge by the co-owner in possession, where the goods are in the possession of one of the co-owner. When two owners are there, it is in the possession of one owner. With the consent of the other co-owner, such co-owner may create a valid pledge of the goods. So he will take a valid pledge of the goods. So any of the co-owner, any one person can make a valid pledge for the same. So the pledge by the seller or the buyer in the possession after the sale is valid pledge provides the goods in the good faith. So they will be provided in the good faith to the another person. So that was with the concept of the pledge when this something is given in some for some security. Now we are going to discuss the topic of law of agency. The law of agency is basically dealing with when some agent is hired by one party to represent himself. So that would come into the agency part. Agencies or the agents which are known for the same. So under the section 182, an agent is a person employed to do any act for another or to represent another in dealing with the third person. So when some person has hired some person, another person to become an agent, or he has hired some agency to work in his position. So he has authorized someone. The person for whom such an act is done or who is so represented is called the principal. So the person who is being represented by someone, that is known as the principal. Suppose A is a person. A has hired B as an agent. So A will become as a principal over here. The person who delegates the authority is known as the principal. To whom the power is delegated is known as the agent. The relationship that is created is known as the agency. So the relationship between the agent and the principal, that is known as the agency. The person who acts in the place of the another, that is the agent. The person on whom behalf he is acting, that is known as the principal. So these are how the various people are working over there. Next are the features of the contract of agency. The principal is answerable to the third party for the act of the agent. So if agent do anything, if the third person may act in the any of the form, then the principal is answerable for the same to the another person. Consideration not necessary. Section 185 of the Act clearly lays down no consideration is necessary to create an agency. So when some agent is being hired, it doesn't mean that something is to be paid in the consideration. Principal must be competent to employ an agent. So principal has to employ an agent and he must be competent for the same to keep some person as an agent for him. Only a person who is competent to the contract can employ an agent. Major or sound mind. So a person who is either of 18 years or more than 18 years and who is of sound mind, means he is not mentally disturbed or he is not drunk or he is not of sound mind. So those persons will not be considered over here. Only the major and a person with the sound mind will be considered as an agent who will be becoming as a competent person or the third person for the principal. Agent may not have the contractual capacity. A minor or a person of unsound mind may act as an agent and bind the principal to the third person. So they may become an agent, but then further the third person is to be kept for the same, but it is not possible. A minor cannot be an agent and a person of unsound mind also cannot become as an agent. It's not practically feasible. Next, the test of the agencies. A person does not become an agent on behalf of the another merely because he has given him an advice in the matter of the business. So if someone is giving an advice for some business or for some purpose, then it doesn't mean that he has become an agent. He need to be entered into a proper way, into a proper formalities, then only a person can become as an agent and he can enter into an agency. Every person who acts for the another cannot be an agent. Cobbler, meaning the shoes, mending the shoes for a man, servant renting the services for us are not the agents. They are not the agents, they are the service providers. So they cannot come into the agency part. So they are just merely a service provider. To test whether the person is not an agent, the essential condition is that whether he is clothed with the necessary authorities by another principal to bind him and to make him answerable to the third person, and thus establish a privity contract between the third person, the principal. So when there is a contract between the third person and the principal, then only it will be an agent. Then only it will become as a proper authorized agent. Otherwise, it won't be an agent. If this condition is satisfied, then a person is considered as an agent. So when there is a binding between the two people with the proper contract. Classification of agents, types of agent means. So first is the special agent, who is employed to do some particular act or represent his principal in some particular transactions. As soon as the act is performed, the authority of the agent come to an end. An agent engaged to sell a house. So when they are being hired for some particular purpose, for some particular act to happen. So as soon as that act has happened or some purpose has been finished, the agent has also not engaged into the same authority for any more time. Next is the journal agent, who is employed to do all such acts which are connected with the business of the trade of his employer. If the principal limited authority secretly, he himself will be bounded for the same. So if the principal want to limit his authority, if the principal don't want to work much, then he will hire a general agent which will be always working for him. Next is the universal agent, is the one who is employed to all such acts which a principal can lawfully do and can delegate. An agent has an unlimited authority. So these kind of agent, they have unlimited authority. They can do as the things are lawful and they can be delegated to the further next person also. From the point of view of the nature of the work to be performed. Factor is a mercantile agent to whom the possession of the goods are given for the purpose of selling them. So he is a person who is being given the duty to sell those goods. So possession of the goods are being given for the purpose of selling those goods. He usually sells the goods in his own name. He can exercise a general right of the lien on the goods delivered to him for balance of the payment, if any. So he will be having the goods in his own possession. He will sell them with his own name and will give back the money to the second person, but he will keep his share over there. The security will be kept over there. Next is the auctioneer. Second one is the auctioneer, is an agent who is appointed by the principal to sell the goods on his behalf to the public auction for a reward in the form of the commission. Example, the reserve prices. So when we are giving something on auction, boli lagti hai, when the boli is there for some goods, so auction is being kept over there. So that is being, when some goods are being sold to the public on the auction. It may be a property, it may be a land, it may be some particular kind of goods. Next are the brokers. A broker is an agent appointed by the principal for the purpose of selling or buying the goods on his behalf. He do not have the possession of the goods, nor he can contract in his own name. He bring the seller and the buyers together to the bargainer. He gets the commission, that is the brokerage. So he will get the commission out of it, and he will sell or buy the goods on the behalf of the person. So he will bring both the buyers and the seller on the same level, and they will meet together. And when the the purpose is being solved, the goods are being sold upon, then he will get the commission out of it. So those are the brokers. Next are the commission agent. Is a mercantile agent who is employed to buy and sell the goods for his principal on best possible terms. He transacts in his own name. He is entitled to the commission. He may or may not have the possession. So he is the one who is going to buy or sell the goods for his principal on the possible terms, and he is going to get the commission out of it. He is going to get the money out of it. So he is going to get his own share. So he may or may not have the possession. The goods may be with him or may not be with him. Then dealt credit agent is a one who guarantee to his principal the performance of the financial obligation by the party with whom he entered into a contract on the principal behalf in consideration of an extra commission. He becomes surety and become liable on the defect of the third party. So dealt credit agent is the one who is going to give the who is going to keep the goods on the purpose of the credit. So who is going to give some credit out of it. So money on the credit, that will be over there, and the surety is being kept for this. So some against some surety, against some security kind of thing, against some guarantee kind of thing, the money is being given for the same. Next are the bankers. Act as a mercantile agent on the behalf of his customer when he collect the check, draft, bill, and pay the insurance premium and buy or sell the securities. So when the securities are being sold off, when the insurances are being sold off, so and the checks are being collected, the drafts and the bills are being coming over there. So that is the banker who acts as a mercantile agent on the behalf of his customers. Further is the creation of the agency. By express agreement, authority is given to the agent in writing or by the word of mouth. So that will be either verbally or it will be in written. He can bind the principal to the third party by his act to extent he is delegated with the authority. So that would be an expressed agreement. When there is an agreement given by a principal to the third party. By implied agreement, agency by estoppel, where a person permits another to act on his behalf. The principal has estopped by denying his agent's authority. So the principal either can stop the authority of the agent, and he can give the person the permit to act on his behalf. So that is on the part of the principal. Either the principal can permit someone to act on his behalf, or he can stop him. Stop means he is going to stop by denying him that you are no more going to work on my behalf. Example, A tells B in the presence of P that A is the agent of P. P does not contradict the statement. B entered into the contract with P on the belief that A is P's agent. In such case, P would be bounded by the contract. He is not the agent. He ceased to be an agent. It was just told over there, but it was not written over there. Agency by holding out some positive conduct of the principal indicating that a particular person is his agent. So when some holding is out of that, when some written is out of that, he sends A to buy the goods on credit from C. A buys the goods on credit for himself and refuses to pay. C sue P. P cannot be plead that A had no authority for the same. So the P cannot be P'd because A was having no authority for the same to buy those goods. So C has to talk to P for the same. Next, agency by necessity. When an agency is created by the circumstances, when for some purpose or in some particular circumstances an agency has been created, the impossibility of getting the instructions from the principal is the basis for creation of the agency by necessity. So when the principal gives some instructions for the same, X sends some horses to Y through a railway company. So X sent some horses to Y by rail, but Y did not take the delivery of the horses at the destination. With the result, the railway company had to feed the horses. Held, Railway Co. was an agent for necessity and could recover the amount spent on feeding the horses. Now X have sent the horses to Y, but Y was not able to take the delivery of the horses. In those circumstances, on those 2-3 days, railway has to take care of the horses and railway has to feed those horses. The railway has to provide food to those horses. So that expenses the railway is going to take from X. So that was for some necessity over there. Agency by rectification. Rectification means subsequent observation or acceptance by a person of an unauthorized act done by the another on his behalf without any authority. So when on the behalf, on the acceptance by the person or some unauthorized act of the person, X buys 5 bags of the wheat on the behalf of Y without his knowledge or authority. Y would be bounded by the contract if he rectify or accept the same. It can be expressed or implied. So X has bought 5 bags of the wheat on the behalf of Y, but Y was having no knowledge, then Y has to rectify the same for the acceptance of those bags. So that may be either expressed or it may be implied one. So next are the essentials of a valid rectification. The act must have done as an agent on the behalf of the principal identified. So there must be a person who has been identified as a principal by the principal to act on his part. Only a person on whose behalf the act is done can rectify it. So if B is going to make A as an agent, only the B can rectify the A's work or A's act. So B is the rectifier over here. So main principal would act as a rectifier only. If the agent acts in his own name, his act cannot be rectified by the another person. So if he uses own name, if A has hired B as an agent, so A can rectify the thing. But if B is showing his own name only, then B cannot rectify the things. Principal must be in existence. Example, the company or the promoter. The principal must be competent to rectify the act. So he can rectify the thing that the principal can only rectify. Must have contractual capacity. He has the capacity to enter into the contract. A minor cannot rectify the contract or the contract on attaining the age of the majority. So a minor cannot rectify the contract until he has attained the age of majority. The principal must have the full knowledge of all the material facts. X brought certain goods for Y at the price greater than the market value in the name of Y. Y rectify the transactions without knowing the same, the higher price. Their rectification is valid. So when the principal has gained the full knowledge of the material fact and X has bought some certain goods from the Y at the price greater than the market value, so he has purchased those goods on the high value, which is not available in the market. It is available in the market at the low price, but they are being purchased on the higher price. Then Y can rectify the transaction without knowing the same higher price. So here the rectification is invalid. The principal must rectify the whole transaction. The rectification must be made within the reasonable time. So this rectification, these changes must be made in some reasonable time only. The act to be rectified must not be a void or illegal. It should not be void or it should not be illegal. And rectification must be communicated. And these rectifications which has come, they must be communicated. They must be informed to everyone. So that's all for today. Thank you everyone for patient listening.